جمال الوجود بذكر الإله وتصفو الحياة بنور هدى جمال الوجود بذكر.
All right, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum. For those of you who are paying attention to the WOVA app, you may notice that it says this session is moderated by someone named Sufia Azmat. As you can clearly see, I am not Sister Sufia Azmat. Sister Sufia Azmat is not feeling well. May Allah give her shifa. My name is William White, and I will have the honor of facilitating or introducing this session. Our session that we are going to start momentarily is Faith-Centered Integration, Reawakening Curriculum Across Disciplines, an interactive workshop on moving Tawheed from mission statements into daily lessons. The speakers will explore a practical three-step framework, aligning Islamic studies with subject outcomes, designing belief practice character assessments, and embodying service projects so Aqidah, Fiqh, Akhlaq, and Seerah live inside every unit. Our speakers are Afifa Saeed, cultural anthropologist and founding director of Al-Fatih Academy, where for 25 years she has led an integrated model blending peace, education, service, and place-based learning. And Dr. Ismail, an educator and scholar practitioner with classroom experience across public and private schools, who is now the executive director of Fawakih Institute and a recent ED graduate focused on Muslim pre-K through 12th education. Inshallah, this session is scheduled to go until 11:45. We will try to wrap up around 11:40 to leave some time, inshallah, for some questions and answers. So without further ado, I'm pleased to present our esteemed speakers for this session.
Assalamu alaikum. Good morning. And all the different greetings for all the different time zones that we are all coming from. Alhamdulillah. So we did ask if everyone could come a little bit closer in, and it's a very big room, but we wanted to be able to see you all and also interact as well, inshallah. So barakallahu feekum. So alhamdulillah that we are gathered here together for this very, very important work of tajdeed, but also the important work of sharing hearts and sharing our minds and essentially sharing our souls with one another in the work that we do, which is so spiritual. We know that as educators, as teachers, that there are so many hadith and so many connections to the fact that as teachers, what we do is something even the ants and the small insects and everything that Allah has created that is unseen to us has the praises of the work that we do. So there's that much responsibility, that much amana on what we do, inshallah. So we wanted to have this conversation with you. It was going to be a quiet conversation, but it's a little bit loud because we're in this room. But we wanted to have this conversation about what does it mean as part of tajdeed, and especially as part of what Dr. Abdullah just left us with, to have a renewal and to have a reconnection to how we teach, what we teach, and the curriculum that we are working on together. So a part of that, we want to start by talking about what do we want our students that are in our classrooms, that are in our schools, what do we want them to look like? What do we want them to feel like? What do we want them to be like once they leave our classrooms, our hallways, and our lessons that we have with them? So we have many people in our history, of course, in Seerah, that we aspire to. So a couple of them that we know about. So we know that we have scholars, we have people that have accomplished many things as inspirational, but also as people, as individuals that have had the education to be able to do those. So we have Khwarizmi, who of course was fluent in math and fiqh and geography, astronomy, history. We also have Nana Asma'u, who comes from the heart of Africa and African Islam, and was able to bring poetry, bring science, but also history together as a role model for us in her time and in her place. And in fact, her work still continues now. If you go and you find that there's a movement of women teachers who would go into the forests to teach people that could not come to schools. And the teaching that they had there in those forests and the way that they were teaching was to enliven the spirit and to bring education in a way that was relevant and created individuals who had the connection to what they were going to do with their mind and with their benefit to society. So these are examples, and there are many, many more. And we think of them as people that contributed to society. We have, of course, Al-Andalus. We have so many times of greatness as Muslims that we have these individuals that have affected society. And we look at them as what they have contributed and what they have had impact on. But I want us to take a step back a little bit. And it's not what they necessarily ended up doing. What I would like us to do, and Ismail and I are going to talk about, is what did it take for them to become those people of impact? What did it take for them to develop their mindset to become people that can contribute? What is it that we are doing in our schools to create more Nana Asma'us or Khawarizmis or others that come from our institutions that can affect, impact, and benefit the world? That's what we would like to talk about today in this integrated framework that we have. So one of the ways that we look at students, and this is from our school, Al-Fatih Academy, what do we want them to end up being and what do we want them to look like? So if you'll see here, there's a lot of words, I know, but we thought about it, and in fact, we asked our students, what do you want to leave our school, but what do you want to feel and look and benefit the world as you go into the world in those ways? So we look at those role models, then we look at what do we want someone to come out of our school to look like. So it's connected. It's connected to what we want to happen, what we want to impact, and also what students themselves want to hold as characteristics, but also as ways to impact the world. One of the ways that we take the end result and pull back and talk about what does spiritual development in our school look like, what does spiritual development for those individuals in our school who are going to be impactful, inshallah, what are some aspects of that development? What are some connections that they can have? So I developed this as part of a conversation and a project I was working on with Jewish, Muslim, Christian, Buddhist, and indigenous schools in the US. So we sat down together and we talked about spirituality across faiths. And we came up with this model to think about how do we center all of that? You can see, of course, Allah for us is in the middle, and we talk about values and beliefs, intentional action, relationship, meaning and purpose, awe and wonder, self-knowledge, transformative experiences. So essentially, we're using this compass and the nodes that it points to help us in our schools and in our education journeys to realize that there's so much more to the way that our spiritual development happens than just one piece, or just religious education, or just having a school for the sake of having a school. We want to be able to be holistic, and we want to be able to be interconnected with all of that. Would anybody add something to this? Is there something missing? Yes?
Audible? Yeah. When it comes to usage of technology, other elements, and that we see in and around us, let's suppose, take an example of purpose, right? So whatever learning and education we are bringing into picture should be transformed from examination to empowerment.
Examination to?
Examination to empowerment.
Okay.
Yes.
So you would add an aspect of that?
Yes.
Okay, yes.
I would like to more ask you, like, you're intentionally not including the science and technology related?
Yes. So the question is, why don't you see science and technology? Why do you think? So this compass, the point of this is to have the thought that we're not just talking about our subjects. What are we talking about here? Transformation, overall, permeating, fluid, in connection to everything we're doing. So this is a framework, it's a worldview, it's an idea that whatever you're going to be doing, these aspects of it are a part of that. That's the offering I have here. It's a connection to everything that we're doing, right? So if you look at any one of them, and we have a whole, I do a whole module just on this, in terms of how we connect it further and further into anything that you're doing. Even if you're doing a physical space, how does this all relate to the physical space that we're in? Because it can. You can have awe and wonder in the building. How would you do that? You think about it. And I love what Dr. Abdullah said, that's your problem in the sense that you come up with that solution, right? So each of these has a connection to what you can do in your school to build that spirituality. Okay. Yes, please.
Given the current situation of the world that we're in, problem solving, a solution focused.
Yes. So, and I appreciate what you're saying. And she's sister's asking, adding problem solving, right? So, what I want to think about is problem solving and any other of the critical skills that we are teaching, because there's critical thinking, it's all of that. I would suggest it's all embedded in this, and this is more of the spiritual side of it, and then how did problem solving connect to spirituality? It'll definitely come up. So let me go a little bit further into the approach of holistic education. And what I'm trying to do is I'm going to show you, kind of connect with you with the fabric of our approach to education, and then Ismail is going to come in and give you some threads which are more detailed than what I'm going to talk about. But essentially what we're talking about in our approach to education is that fitra is at the very core of it. And fitra is the natural disposition. It is what children are born with. And what I really like to say, as much as people say, we have to teach the love of Allah in our schools. We have to teach those children to be Muslim. We have to teach them to love Allah. I would like us to step back and say, they are born with what? They already love Allah. They're born with the connection and with the love of Allah that is innate, that is powerful, and that is already there. So we don't teach the love of Allah. What we do, and you heard it from Brother Abdullah as well, is that we connect to that fitrah in the most essential way. And the argument, of course, is that education itself, and as educators, what we are doing is looking and finding that fitrah and scaffolding it, supporting it, understanding it. So if we understand fitrah as being essential, then we'll do differentiation in our classrooms. We will do connection to the individual rather than the whole. We will do child-centered and child-led, because the fitrah is what is the most important aspect of that. So scaffolding the fitrah is really connecting to the very essence of what each child and each student is about. And then at the end of the day, education itself, as what we are doing, oh, thank you so much. What we are doing essentially at the end of the day is that education is about transformation. And Dr. Abdullah said it also very beautifully. It is not about knowledge in itself, but it is about how that knowledge is used to transform, right? Whether it's the individual, whether it's the collective that we are a part of, whether it's the world. And transformation, in the end of the day, is the responsibility we have as teachers in the classroom, but it is also the responsibility of the society as an amana, right? It all connects together. And about being, ultimately, it is about the state or the hal that we each have in that transformation, and how we change that status, and how we change that being into something that is going to become even more effective or impactful in what we do. And then essentially, this is Dr. Attas's definition as well. Highest internal good of education is the cultivation of adab, which is, in some cases, manners, but we know it's much more than that, right? It is a perspective, and it is an approach, and it is a connection. So the question in the last session about what do we do with children, with students when they leave the schools and they're being affected by what's around them, well, if we've done our job with education, if we've done our job with scaffolding the fitrah, then the adab, which is the essential way of being for a young person leaving the school, they're going to be able to be connected. You can see this is one of our students, a group of our students who decided on their own to have a protest about the climate change, right? So we didn't ask for that. They came up with the idea that they wanted to have something to do with affecting change in the world. And that's because we've created that space for them. And the personality that connects meaning to knowledge is what that is a basis of. We had, you may know, in the US, we have a lot of gun violence. We have a lot of shootings, unfortunately, in schools. So one way to do it is to just say, oh, that's outside. It doesn't affect us. It's unfortunate that it affects everybody. So our students were very worried, and they're 7th and 8th graders, and they said, we have to do something. We need to march. So they created their own set of ideals, and they marched, around the whole neighborhood and they created for themselves something that would help them feel empowered. But it was also, and they had to skip classes for that. Did we say, no, we have to be in the classroom because that's important? No, because this was the transformational experience for them, to be able to go out into the world, to have a voice, to make a statement. That calculation for us was that is going to be more important of an impact educationally than being in a classroom for that time. Okay. So essentially, what we are concerned about, and this is a quote from a mentor and very dear friend of mine, Susan Douglas, who says a holistic elaboration of Islamic school's mission would be to prepare, and the highlights are important, it's a life of service to society based on service to the Creator, knowledge as whole, and integrate Islamic knowledge with nationally recognized academic standards and scholarship. So Islamic education, in the end of the day, should be viewed as a seamless process that intertwines the sacred and the, you can all read it, secular. What is that? What does that mean? Why is she using those two terms?
It's not because sacred is a revealed knowledge, while secular is applied science.
So one definition is applied knowledge, which is man-made. Sacred is revealed sciences. So revealed sciences and sciences, we're making a dichotomy, right? Right. So Susan is, being explicit about it and using these two terms. But as we heard from Dr. Abdullah, and many of us know that there is a continuum of knowledge, and that continuum of knowledge is seamless, and it should be like that, because you can have a connection to the sciences through wahi and through revealed. There's beautiful quotes that I know many of you know Jane Goodall, who just passed away. She's somebody that I've admired for many, many years. She originally studied chimpanzees. She has a book called, it's a book about hope. And Jane Goodall is a scientist, and she said because of her time studying chimpanzees, being in the world, in the natural world, her connection to spirituality was, of course, what? Increased, right? She found God, and she didn't call him God, she says spirituality. She found spirituality in nature, and she says something very clear. She says it's not we and nature. It's not we as people and nature. We are nature. We're not even part of it. We are nature. So this dichotomy between things and this disconnect doesn't really exist. We are nature because Allah Ta'ala has created us as part of creation. And when we start thinking about it that way, as a child does, by the way, this is how children think. They don't think me and the insect. They are part of the same space as the insect. And many of us will jump and scream, there's an insect in the room. But if you watch a child, that's not what they do because they connect to it very naturally. So that's a point about connectivity.
You okay?
So the connection between schools and how schools look at this and how they intertwine the sacred. And so spending too much time saying, should we just be teaching Islam or should we be teaching the real subjects? So that disconnect doesn't really apply here. So what do we usually do? Usually we talk about core subjects. We have math, we have language arts, we have science, social studies, and then we talk about, we have specials, for example, in some cases you have physical education, art, electives, and then we say we have Islam, Quran, and Arabic. And we have created these silos. And it's great. It's great that we have defined for our schools these buckets, right? But what we're arguing for and what we are proponents for is there's something more than this, this siloing. There's something more than this as it stands. And what is that connectivity that we can have for between these, but also beyond these? Because we're talking about integration. We're talking about if we want to end up with somebody who can change the world, they need to be able to see something and experience something that is more than just how things are delineated in this way. So if we are using this Fitra model, and I know we're going to have more conversations about it during the week, if we're using the Fitra model and we're using what we're going to be calling the integration model, and you'll see Ismail will go more detail, the end result of that, and because we want our result is a person that can make impact, we are going to have students that see a whole. So I'll just give you a quick example. When we teach about other religions in our school, and the model that we use, if we're teaching about Christianity, ideally for 8th grade, we have a Christian come to our Islamic school to talk about Christianity. The same with Buddhists, so what happens there is that we are elevating the idea of authenticity. Authentic knowledge, authentic interaction, authentic engagement, so that they understand the other in their own space, and they also understand the other authentically. So they can ask that Christian, why do you believe this? And so we're creating that space in our environment as well. And then we can also have conversations about, the question was before, how do they manage when they leave an Islamic school? Before they leave, this goes back to the amana question. If we don't prepare our students to deal with how are they going to respond to a question about, hey, aren't you a terrorist? Don't you believe, whatever it is that's out there, if we don't have those conversations before they leave, we are doing a disservice to them. So that's what we do. We have role playing. We pull out all the stereotypes and say, this is how you're going to confront it. I was just telling Dylan and Nadeem, we even had the conversation about, I'm a boy, what if another boy asks me on a date? We have to have that kind of a conversation now. It's very clear that whatever they're going into society, if we don't have that within our school addressed, we are doing a disservice and reducing the amana. I'm going to turn it over to Ismail. He's going to go into some more details, and I think some of these issues about identity maybe we can talk about there, which I know is a big topic. So I don't know if you can hear, the sisters are talking about what do we do, number one, with non-Muslim teachers who are teaching the sciences, math and science, etc., and they don't have access to or don't have an understanding of the Islamic framework. And then also in terms of how is partly what we're going to talk about, Ismail's going to go into, is how we do the integration. So a science teacher will have at his or her disposal the whole curriculum, that will have a connection to having the Islamic connection already there. So part of it is how much work we do as school leaders, as educators, to create the curriculum so it's not happenstance and it's not dependent on one individual. It's part of a whole. So what we do with all of this, and then to create that curriculum so anybody can teach it, but it's also very intentional and it's very methodical. So we're not talking about integration just haphazard. We're talking about it connected. So I know I haven't defined integration, but I'm going to leave it to Ismail to connect to that and then go further, inshallah, with that aspect of it.
سعد إلى منتهى